What's up, house groups? You're getting just my dumb face on a computer screen this week because my entire tech team refused to come to work on a federal holiday, which is to say, Jeremy is on a family vacation. This week, we kicked off a brand new series called The Way We Wait. And we talked about how waiting is a universal human experience that's also super frustrating. We wait for healing. We wait for test results. We wait for things to change. We wait for hope. We wait on God to do the things He promised He'll do eventually that we wish He would do now. And we don't like waiting, but it's important for us to know that waiting is not neutral. We're never just waiting for something. We're becoming someone in the process. And so what we're going to do over the course of the next few months is dig into these two letters that Paul wrote to the church in Thessalonica, which was this Macedonian port city where he planted a church, and the church there exploded. Paul, Silas, and Timothy showed up, a bunch of Jews and Gentiles who were already believers in God, and a bunch of pagans started following Jesus, and immediately they were persecuted. They started suffering. There were Jews who hated them. There were Romans who said they were defying Caesar by claiming that Jesus was a king. And they lost money and they lost reputation and they lost the futures they thought they had. And so they were waiting for Jesus to come back and fix it. And Paul talked to them a whole lot about how to live well in the waiting. And a couple thousand years later, we're in this exact same boat. We're still living in a world that's broken and messed up, waiting for Jesus to come set things right. And we can wait better, and we can wait well, and we can become who we were made to become if we live well in the waiting, and if we wait well. Because waiting makes a huge difference. Waiting is a formative thing in our lives, especially when we're waiting on God. And so it's important for us to stop, press pause, and ask the question, what is my waiting producing in me? Like the way I'm waiting for all the things in my life, but especially the way that I'm waiting on Jesus ultimately to save me and to save the world. What is that producing me? Who am I becoming? And Paul talked a whole lot about that in his two letters to the Thessalonians, which are probably the earliest New Testament books ever written. These are the first Christian documents that we have to this church that he had planted and then had to run away from really quickly because the opposition and persecution in the city was so intense that they tried to murder Paul. And so he sent Timothy back to check on him. And Timothy's like, they're actually nailing it, even though Paul thought, oh, great, they probably quit. And Paul kicked off the letter by talking about this pattern of behavior in life that would help them wait well. And he talked about three things in chapter 1: work produced by faith, labor prompted by love, and endurance inspired by hope. Faith, love, and hope. Not just words, not just beliefs, but a pattern of action in their lives that help them be and become who God created them to be, even in the middle of a broken world. And Paul sort of threw out the pattern and said the only way that pattern is possible in your lives, the only reason this is happening is that the Holy Spirit is alive and at work in you, and the truth of the gospel is transformative, and so it can take your old patterns and replace them with new beautiful patterns. And the same thing is true in our lives. The Holy Spirit at work in us and the truth of the gospel can help us adopt different patterns that help us be and become who God says we were made to be. First of all, like work produced by faith. Like our faith ought to play itself out in our lives in a way that makes the world take notice, that leaves footprints that point other people toward Jesus. And when we're intentional about doing things that show the world who Jesus is, it makes a difference. Not just in the lives of the people who are looking at us wondering, like, whatever you have, I want some of that, but it makes a difference for us as we live out our faith and live more fully alive, and we become the people we were created to be. And then there's labor prompted by love. And this word for labor means hard work. And what Paul's talking about there is loving difficult people, doing the hard work of loving hard people to love. And this one, too, is not simple. This doesn't come naturally for us. Our natural pattern of behavior is to avoid difficult people. And it's to keep anybody at an arm's length who we don't like to be around. And there's a real need in our lives to set up boundaries with toxic people, but also there's a calling to love these people that Jesus loved so much he gave his life for them in a way that shows them who he is and how he loves. And so we're meant to intentionally show love to difficult people. And as we do that, we connect humanity back together. We connect people toward or with the God who can heal them, and we live more fully alive in the process. And the last one is endurance, inspired by hope. Endurance is hard, and hope is hard because the world is messed up and broken, but we're not hoping like just with some sort of blind optimism. When Paul says hope, he's not talking about like, I don't know, maybe it'll happen. He's talking about this future that is already secure, that just hasn't happened yet. And you guys, when we know that the future is settled, then the present is always survivable. And so we have this hope that the end of the story is written, that Jesus really is coming back and he's going to set all things right and make all things new, and that we get to live with him for eternity. And because we know that's the end of the story, we can endure whatever the world throws at us. And so this week, as we kick off this series, I just want to challenge you to pray that God would do two things in your life. Number one, they would help you reveal any patterns that you need to get rid of, any patterns that are producing in you something other than the life he has for you. And that he would, number two, help you develop the patterns you were made for. Because we're going to be waiting for a while. Life is full of waiting, but we wait well when we live into the patterns God says we were made for, these ones that bring flourishing to our lives. And faith, love, and hope bring flourishing to our lives. And so I challenge you tonight, as you move into groups and have this discussion, to take an honest look at your life and take an honest look at your habits and your disciplines and ask the question, like, what are my patterns producing in me? Who am I becoming? What story is my life telling? Where do the footprints of my life lead? And then I challenge you, in the areas where you're not becoming who you think you're supposed to become, where your patterns are not producing something healthy in you, to ask God to give you the power by the Holy Spirit working in you and the truth of the gospel to get rid of those patterns. And then also, I challenge you to take a look at the positive patterns, the stuff in your life, if you could add it now, that would move you powerfully in the direction of who you most want to be, who God says you were created to be. And I challenge you to ask God to help you, again, by the power of the Holy Spirit and the truth of the gospel, to develop those patterns, to develop faith, love, and hope in a way that not only makes you more fully alive, but helps you make the difference you were put here to make. Because I think with Jesus alive and working in us, because we know who he is and because we know what he will do, we know the end of the story, we can wait well and we can develop patterns that help us step into the lives and the stories and the futures he has for us and allow him to work through us to help others do the same.